Greetings, YouTube. I've worked in manufacturing for 37 years. I've mentioned that on my channel many times. It's one of the reasons I have some understanding of how to use machinery and why I got into one of the reasons I got into crafting and why I have my own shop in my basement. And why I build weird and wacky things on my weekends. When I have a weekend, right now they're making me work 6 days a week, so I really don't get much of a weekend. As I record this, it is 4:30 on a Saturday afternoon, and I have to work tonight. They said they're going to pay me double time. I don't really care. I want my time off, and I don't have it. I'm getting 1 day a week off, not happy about it. But I have, over time, seen things change culturally within manufacturing. And back when I started, most manufacturing plants of any kind of a size had an incoming inspection department. So product would come into the building from vendors, and they would be sampled, and if the lot was approved, the lot would go to the production floor and be used in whatever capacity it is. They could be checking chemicals, they could be checking plastic objects or metal objects or what have you, because depending what the plant made or the different components that go into the thing the plant makes. Most things have multiple components. But sometime around the turn of the century, in the late 90s, around the year 2000, there was a shift. And I didn't even notice it at first. But I've come to realize that it was definitely one of those things that was being put forth by folks with MBAs. Now, if anybody out there who has an MBA seeing this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you have an MBA, because MBAs are fucking evil. It helps to give a framework of looking at the world in a way that is anti-human and helping us to destroy our planet. But it also puts pressure on people in a way that is really bad. And I'm about to describe what happened, and I witnessed it. So there was a shift to companies now expecting their vendors to ship them perfect parts. And as they began to do this, they began to eliminate their incoming inspection departments. So by doing this, some MBA genius out there was able to slash a line item off of the actual budget. So they had the budget, and they were able to remove an entire thing. An entire department was removed from the budget. That makes people in charge of budgets so happy. Or at least the people at top. People in charge of the actual money are probably smarter than this. But the CEOs, they're really easy to fool. Particularly if they're white men. Entitled white men, easiest rubes in the goddamn world. You convince them that something's going to make them look good, and they'll do it. They're used to failing forward, and they do. Even their lateral moves tend to get them some kind of a bonus. So, eliminating the income inspection department and now requiring your vendors to send you perfect parts was supposed to be a perfect solution. Bingo, we just saved a bunch of money. Our parts that are coming in, we know they're perfect, so we just send them to the floor. Not so much. No, not so much. Because sometimes the parts that hit the floor are good, and you use them and you don't have a problem. Sometimes you get bad lots, and then you stop dead in your tracks. Because now you have to figure out, I've got a lot, it's made X number of rejects within this number. My policies say if you get so many rejects in a row, usually 3 cycles, you have to stop. So now I've stopped dead in my tracks. I have a lot I can't trust. What do I do? So now the company who has now convinced themselves that the incoming parts are perfect, because they've told their vendors, only send me perfect parts. And now your production has stopped dead in its tracks. You think your customer's going to be okay with that? You think your customer's going to be okay when you don't make the ship date? No. No, they aren't. But there's also unintended consequences to this. And say you get parts that are only kind of not good. They go through the system, but unbeknownst to you, they're not the way the customer wants. parts, but it's too late. You've shipped them. So now your customer has a lot that they get. That isn't perfect. So now you get to see what happens. Before you were just complaining to your vendor, but now you're the one receiving the complaints. And when you get a customer complaint, so many things happen, and all of them are ugly, and none of them are fun. There are so many things that involve meetings and phone calls and so much goddamn paperwork. And you have to put some kind of mitigation effort in place. And almost always, the mitigation effort puts more work on the person making the parts. They'll put in test gauges, or they'll put in procedures that say, okay, you can't use that tool, or you have to use this kind of thing. So you're changing and limiting how a person does their job, even though you have no goddamn idea how that person is supposed to do their job. And you keep adding steps to the process, but you're not slowing down their piece count. Their piece count is the same as it was yesterday, but now you've added in a new step. You've made their lives worse, more stressful. And some of the rejects I have seen, because we'll get pictures sometimes from our customers, were not passed. People panicked and they just shoved parts into boxes because they were so desperate to make their numbers that they took the gamble and they lost. Because numbers are the god in manufacturing. They'll tell you safety is. They'll tell you quality is. It's not. Production numbers are. And they will grind you into dust to get them. So even though you've taken that line item off of your budget, now you're having to pay people within your company to go through all the parts that are still in your plant before your customer will accept them. So you have to do 100% inspection, where before you were only doing a sample. But now, 100% inspection. And you're going to do this for like 3 months. Eventually, they'll say, okay, you've proven to us you can get it. But at the same time, the customer has some of your parts. So they have to do 100% inspection. And sometimes they'll do it within their plant and charge you for that time. Or sometimes they will bring in outside people whose only job is to go to different places and inspect parts, or they will ship the parts to these third-party inspection companies, and they will inspect your parts and charge you because you screwed up. And again, sometimes you end up in a situation where you have to inspect those parts 100% now forever. I've seen that in my plant. We have parts that we are currently inspecting 100% because we can't make them the way the customer wants because the process doesn't work. That's another video. So even though you've got that line item off of your budget, now the other section of your budget is blossoming in a really bad way. You're spending money on expediting shipments. You're spending money on third-party inspectors. You're spending money on your own employees, either not making parts and doing second inspection or working overtime to do second inspection. All because every company expects their vendor to send perfect parts, which is absurd. There are no perfect parts. I spent 5 years as a floor inspector, and when I was doing floor inspection, every single unit that got shipped got inspected. Every unit. If a guy made 17 boxes of parts in one shift, I would inspect 17 boxes of parts in that shift. I would do a sample. There was a formula. Depending on the quantity in the box, there was a formula to tell you how many you have to sample to statistically have the best chance of finding a reject. I don't remember the formula anymore. I don't need it anymore. And I would frustrate people because I was particularly lucky at this. I would find a reject. I would put the box on hold. It was a 200-piece box, and there would be one reject in it, the one I found. Good for the customer, pissed off my fellow employees. I had one person get in my face once and yelling at me about the fact that I kept putting her boxes on hold. And I said, you want me to never put your boxes on hold? And she said, yes, very eager. I said, don't put rejects in them. And I walked away. So I know what it's like, and I know that the best operators, The people who have the most skill, who are the most confident, who really know their stuff, working the best processes, which we don't have and nobody does, pass defects every day. And defects aren't necessarily rejects. Now, all rejects are defects. Not all defects are rejects. As I used to say when I was an inspector, I would say, I don't throw them away if they're ugly. As long as they work, that's all I care about. Will this part work in the field? When you install it and whatever the hell it goes into, is it going to work? The answer is yes, ship it. I don't care what it looks like. I care how it performs. And I made sure all of my people knew that. So I wanted good parts. Didn't care if they were pretty parts. But I know as an incoming inspector, I still have my log books that will show you how many boxes I inspected every day and how many times I put a box on hold. And I did it every goddamn day. Rarely was there a part number that didn't get at least one box put on hold. I had one genius one day. He made 17 boxes in a shift, which was high volume. I put 14 of them on hold. He was not a good operator. Made lots of numbers, blind as a friggin' bat, or just didn't care. I don't know which. But he was not a good operator. Eventually, he went into material handler, and not only was bad at that, but was dangerous. So you've shifted your budget, and now it's out of control. And now every company expects perfect parts. Every vendor is panicking. And I can tell you, when you start a new part number, and you're just going into production, there'll be a window about 6 months where everyone is really scrutinizing to make sure they get the certification. Because once your customer certifies you as sending good parts, you're all set. They're now convinced you ship good parts. Well, guess what happens after that? We don't scrutinize them so much anymore. No, we don't. They're not double inspecting those. They're not second inspecting those before they leave the plant anymore. Now it's just the operator on the line who's, remember, trying to get those numbers. And you're going to ship defects. And some of those defects are going to be rejects. And then the whole fucking cycle starts over again. Phone calls and meetings and reports and paperwork and new mitigation efforts. And it's a horrible, horrible cycle. And it leads to being told how valuable you are to the company and at the same time how horrible you are at doing your job. Whereas if we were just living in an era where we accept reality and we inspect parts before they hit the floor because we know we need to catch them. We need lifeguards. If you just accept the reality, the parts are never going to be perfect. And accept that people make mistakes. And stop deluding yourself into thinking you're saving money when you're actually spending more just because you got that stupid line item off of your budget. Everybody would be a whole hell of a lot faster. Hell of a lot happier. With a lot less stress. But that wouldn't make an MBA some money now, would it? That wouldn't get them a bonus. That wouldn't get them a promotion so they can fail forward. Nope. It did. Probably made them a hell of a lot of money. Probably made a bunch of people money. Probably maybe you can get some books written out there. Telling people how you can require your vendors to send you perfect parts and it'll work every goddamn time. It's all bullshit. All of it. I've been in manufacturing too long to not know it. There's probably going to be a series of videos about these kind of things because I've got some stuff that's inside my head that I don't want inside my head anymore. And this is one of those videos. So join me if you work in manufacturing. Are you a vendor shipping parts, praying your parts are perfect so your customer doesn't complain? Are you a customer whose production is ground to a dead halt because your vendor's parts aren't perfect because you deluded yourself into thinking they would be? Or are you one of the poor saps on the line, like me, caught between these two forces, doing the best you can, and slowly being ground into dust?